Hello to the internet viewers, guys. This is a bonus content. The show's going to get started in a few minutes. We're going to kind of go over one more time. We've got a no-knock warrant in the news, breaking news on vitamin D, and like some really good news too. Larry Sharpe on Kennedy on Fox. It's opening up a discussion about solutions and collaborations and important stuff for the future of New York. So bear with me. I appreciate y'all being here. Remember to like, comment, and share. It's Tim O'Connor, the Freedom Variant. Hello, and once again, welcome to A Free Solution. It's your Thursday host, Tim O'Connor, the Freedom Variant, with so much to talk about that I doubt there's any possible way that I'm going to get through it all. It is, guys, it's already February 17th, 2022. And once again, I'm out chasing the almighty dollar, but I did take the time to drop some thoughts off for you. And I've got breaking news, guys. Not necessarily breaking news for people that have paid attention, not necessarily breaking news like about our specific reality, like but observational science occasionally comes through. And so WebMD, ladies and gentlemen, WebMD has finally decided that there is officially a vitamin D deficiency linked causation or correlation, and we've talked about that in the past, linked to severe COVID. And as many of you know who have followed me or talked with me or listened to this show in the past, that I am a proponent of vitamin D. I do believe it has a positive impact on severe responses to COVID. If you're vitamin D normal or take a vitamin D supplement, the likelihood of you having a severe COVID response goes down drastically. But on February 8th, 2022, WebMD published an article, and it's based on data from an Israel study about coronavirus and vitamin D. Now, this was prior to the Omicron variant. And I'm going to quote the article right now. And the article is by Carolyn Christ. And again, it's dated February 2022. It is available on WebMD. All you got to do is look it up. And so basically what it says is, and I'm quoting an Emil Dror, MD, we found it remarkable and striking to see the difference in the chances of becoming a severe patient when you are lacking in vitamin D compared to when you're not. Emil is the lead study author and a doctor at Galilee Medical Center. And they're quoting an article from the Times of Israel. I may refer to that too. But as I mentioned, the study was conducted before the Omicron variant. What we were seeing when vitamin D helps people with COVID infections as a result of its effectiveness in bolstering the immune system to deal with viral pathogens that attack the respiratory system. Also, guys, my understanding, and it helps the body deal with the cytokine storm as a virus becomes prevalent throughout your system. Your body tends to have what's called a cytokine reaction, and it pumps out mucus and it pumps out stuff to protect the body from the virus. As we know, like sometimes a body's reaction to certain things like allergies and things like that will create more of a problem for the body than the actual virus itself. Now, I'm not saying that's necessarily exactly the case, but certainly this evidence kind of points that way. So the research team looked at vitamin D levels for more than 250 patients hospitalized at the Galilee Medical Center with a positive COVID-19 test between April 2020 and February 2021. The vitamin D levels were based on testing conducted before the hospitalization as part of routine blood work for vitamin D deficiency, ranging from 14 to 730 days. So okay, so if they're getting their vitamin D checked, it doesn't necessarily, they don't necessarily know they're going to get COVID. So that's why they have such a wide range of dates. Um, but patients with a vitamin D deficiency were 14 times more likely to have a severe or critical case of COVID-19. What's more, the mortality rate for those with insufficient vitamin D levels was 25.6 compared to guys, and this is a big number, with 2.3% among those with adequate levels. Look, there's a reality, guys, that crazy people like me and crazy people like I said, I've got a friend that's a Harvard trained scientist, that's a biochemistry professor, that we saw an immediate correlation to vitamin D issues. There was studies where people in the Philippines who practiced this thing called whitening, who were basically putting suntan lotion on their skin and blocking all effects from the sun. And the sun, guys, as you all know, creates vitamin D, helps the body create vitamin D. They were having very severe COVID in a female population in the Philippines. And it was hundreds of people. Then there was a study about pregnant women who were getting prenatal vitamins, who were doing things right to take care of their body and their baby, and they were having very mild cases of COVID. Then along comes the entire homeless population in Chicago who were testing positive for COVID, yet having almost zero side effects. And it basically, I in my crazy libertarian mind looking for solutions, said they're outside all the time. That's got to be good for them. And that's part of why their immune system is working the way that it's supposed to work. So crazy conspiracy theories aside, the reality is that now we can talk about vitamin D on platforms like Facebook and on the radio without necessarily being afraid of being shadow banned. When WebMD says it, now Tim O'Connor, the Freedom Variant, can say it without losing his platform. And guys, I never did lose my platform to talk to people. I did talk about the possibility that vitamin D was, in theory, part of the problem with COVID. And so observational science has now told us that there is a strong correlation. And guys, let me be honest too. There are always statistics that I hate the way they get used. Okay. I don't like using reactionary statistics like 14 times more likely to have a severe or critical case of COVID. Now, why I don't like them is because then numbers like that put into the wrong hands get sensationalized. Okay. So when Joe Biden says 79 times more likely to have a severe case of COVID if you're unvaccinated, that's not exactly right. Okay. Those things are never exactly right. And it's sensationalization of statistics. But what is real is the mortality rate for those with insufficient vitamin D levels was 25.6%, compared with 2.3%. Now, that is statistically significant, and it's absolutely important. So while I don't want to spend the whole show on vitamin D, guys, I'm boring you. What I'm trying to say is that every single day, breaking news comes out that tells us conspiracy theorists that maybe we weren't wrong, maybe we were right, maybe we had the right to have a discussion. I've got an article by Zero Hedge that I'm probably going to discuss in one of the segments today. Zero Hedge, again, as you guys have heard me talk about, is a science-based observational magazine that got deplatformed for suggesting that the coronavirus, at the very least, interacted with a man-made virus and therefore gain some transmissibility and some function. And they got deplatformed for it. And basically they're bashing the CDC. And as you know, I'm a big fan of discussing the problems with the CDC. But then there's also a lot of reasonably good news today. Larry Sharpe was on the Kennedy show on Fox Business Channel and on Fox News last night, guys. I hope you saw it. He's making some big announcements. I hopefully have some clips that I'm going to work into the show, and he seems to be making some great collaborations. And as always, as you guys have seen on this show and heard on this show, Larry focuses on solutions. He focuses on kindness. There are absolutely things that I enjoy about him. And guys, as I've said, I'm kind of done with this two-party system. I'm kind of done with this whole reactionary politics, with this back and forth, this constant diatribe coming back and forth. Because we're coming up on a break. As always, a big thank you to WYSL, WACK, for helping libertarians like myself, like Larry Sharpe, like Craig Miles, like Kevin Wilson, have a platform to reach out and discuss these news things, to discuss solutions in a positive, proactive way. I'll be right back after these messages. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to A Free Solution, coming at you over the airways of WYSL, WACK. This show's available on WYSL1040.com. This show's available on the platforms, on the podcast. It's available on the Tim O'Connor pages. It's available on the Kevin Wilson pages. Guys, this is just, like I've said a million times, just a wonderful experience to be able to share my point of view with you about all of the things that are important in today's society. I mean, we've got things to talk about, like the Canadian truckers. We've got things to talk about, not so much the Canadian truckers, about Justin Trudeau's response to the Canadian truckers. We've got things that one more kind of dry subject I want to talk about a little bit before we get into even I don't think it's actually a dry subject, and maybe it is for you, but I want to talk about Zero Hedge and the formerly deplatformed Zero Hedge that now has a voice, even though their voice is still suppressed and muted by the Facebook algorithms, by the Twitter algorithms. Zero Hedge has written an article called "How the CDC Abandoned Science." And the dateline on this is Tuesday, February 15th, 2022, and it's by a Tyler Durden. That name might be familiar. I suspect that is a pseudonym. But anyways, they're talking about the myths that have come out of A, the CDC, B, our society in general, and how on some level, I think we have to admit that the CDC has become a wing of the executive branch, and that they simply participate in the narrative of what the government wants you to how do you go down this road? How do we have this conversation, right, without me feeling like I sound like a conspiracy theorist? And I guess one of the ways we do it is by sharing articles like this from Zero Hedge. Okay, the main federal agency guiding America's pandemic policy is the U.S. Centers for Disease Control, the CDC, which sets widely adopted policies on masking, vaccination, distancing, and other mitigation efforts to slow the spread of COVID and ensure the virus is less morbid when it leads to infection. And guys, look, overrunning hospitals with sick people from COVID is a problem, all right? And so I get the concept of slowing the spread, but all too often, slowing the spread has been confused with stopping the spread. Take a look at New Zealand. All they ever did was try to stop the spread, and they were completely unsuccessful. So they lock themselves down. They start letting people back in the country. COVID comes up, they lock themselves down. It's just been this ongoing cyclical process where the executive branch of their government believes that its job can only be to keep people safe from catching COVID. In the United States, it's been slightly less restrictive. Even in Canada, it's been slightly less restrictive, but still restrictive enough. But anyways, the Zero Hedge writes very good articles, very science-based, very data-based, and So basically what they want to do is take shots at the CDC, because as they're asking us to infer, and they directly point out, the CDC has become the propaganda wing of the executive branch. And maybe I'm saying that too strongly. You'll have to check out the article yourself. But it's, you can find it on Facebook. You can look it up online. And it's worth discussing these things because these things point at solutions. And so to dive a little bit further into the article, and as you guys know, I've been going off about masks, especially masks on kids, for a long time now. In November 2020, a CDC study sought to prove that mask mandates slowed the spread of coronavirus. The study found that countries in Kansas which implemented mask mandates saw case rates start to fall, while counties that did not saw rates continue to climb. And guys, what the CDC did there in November 2020 has been basically thoroughly debunked, but they took too small of a time frame. They didn't take a look at the accumulated numbers, and basically just came along with, boom, we cherry picked some data. This is the narrative the government wants us to back, and so this is the narrative you get. And that's basically what this article in Zero Hedge says. Okay, so that's where we need to approach these things from. Okay. The data scientist Yu Yang Gu immediately noted that locales with more rapid rise would be more likely to implement a mandate, and thus one would expect cases to fall more in such locations independent of masking. Okay. Let's be perfectly honest. Okay. At the start of this most recent pandemic, or the most recent outbreak of Omicron, we imposed a mask mandate. Now, it was completely unsuccessful in stopping the spread, and perhaps, maybe, and these things are hard to prove, right? But perhaps maybe it slowed the spread, but there's no real way to prove that kind of allegation. Like, did it actually slow the spread, or did it have no effect? And so you have to create this test to compare the two things. And when we have an executive branch that's willing to cherry pick statistics, as all of our executive branches in our government and the executive branches in New York State are willing to do, we run into a problem about the discussion of statistics. So basically what we're talking about here is, if we impose a mask mandate, shouldn't either the rate of climb be different in places with no mask mandate, or the change in the number of people that get COVID rapidly? Shouldn't there be some statistically significant difference in those two populations? And basically, in the Kansas study that the CDC was quoting, there was no statistically significant difference about whether to mask or not. And guys, I'm going into places and people are still wearing masks. I respect them. That's their business. But the mask mandate in businesses and restaurants has been lifted, just in case you guys haven't heard it. That's totally up to you whether you wear masks or not. It's totally up to you whether you feel safer wearing a mask or not. All of those things are fine. That's a personal choice, and I'm okay with whatever decision you want to make. I have done a lot of research. I'm saying that masks don't seem to have any effect on slowing the spread. I recently recovered from a case of COVID. And so, first of all, that's another thing that the CDC has completely, as is pointed out in this article, but it completely denies the reality of, okay, if you've had COVID and recovered from it, you are, at least for a short period of time, immune, and probably for a long period of time, okay, somewhat immune from COVID. Okay, you can't get it, you can't transmit it, you're not going to get an infection from it. And so natural immunity is a reality, and the CDC ignores it, pretends it doesn't exist, and continues on about its day saying that the only way to protect yourself from COVID is to get a vaccination. And I don't know if you guys saw that Project Veritas stuff. If you're listening to Glenn Beck, I'm sure you caught some discussion about it. That the definition of efficacy changes based on the executive order. And so we're saying that the vaccines are filled with efficacy, or however they say it. Efficacy is a challenging word. It doesn't mean effective, guys. It doesn't mean, it means works as intended. And when the original discussion was the vaccine will prevent you from getting COVID, and then we end up with, well, it prevents symptoms of COVID, or it moderates symptoms of COVID. That becomes a problem, right? That becomes an issue where we're having a communication issue where, again, it's apparent that the CDC and its new studies, blah, 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 basically only seek to enhance the narrative offered by the executive branch. All right. They even talk about how some might view this stuff as a mistake, but an alarm might boost flagging vaccine uptakes in kids. So the CDC is participating in what can only be described as enhancing the narrative, trying to push vaccines over natural immunity, trying to push vaccines over health. They never talk about the facts of vitamin D. They never talk about the facts about a higher BMI is a risk for body mass index is a risk for COVID. They don't talk about these things, and there's a real problem with that. So manufacturing alarm at the very moment an age or other demographic cohort is targeted for vaccination has become a pattern for the CDC. On May 10th, 2021, the FDA granted emergency use authorization for the 12 to 15-year-old cohort to receive the Pfizer vaccine. On June 11th, the CDC published a study in the MMWR claiming to demonstrate rising hospitalization among this group. Widespread media coverage of the study quickly followed. We all remember this stuff. But the absolute rates for this age group were, in reality, amazingly low. Less than 1.5 per 100,000 people, which was lower than they had been in the previous December. Meanwhile, a safety signal was still being investigated. Myocarditis, or inflammation of the heart muscle, which was more common after the second dose and reported to be as frequent as 1 in 3 to 6,000, according to the Israeli Ministry of Health. Basically, guys, what we're saying there, as always, is here we go, pushing a narrative. And again, you guys should check out the Zero Hedge article yourself. I'm going to move on to stuff about Larry Sharpe in the next segment. Thank you all for joining me. It's Tim O'Connor, your Thursday host for A Free Solution. I hope you come back after the break. Thank you very much. Okay. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to A Free Solution. This show that offers a libertarian view on today's current events, on today's politics, wants us to all take a break from the two-party either-or system. We want to start talking about solutions. We want to start talking about the reality that, to even take a look at Justin Trudeau demonizing people that don't agree with him. There's such a simpler way for him to move forward. He could just lift the vaccine mandates. He could just lift the restrictions, lift the lockdowns, and states in Canada all over the place are starting to change their mind, right? Like, we've heard about the vaccination taxation. That's gone. Okay. They're not doing that anymore. They've lifted that in Quebec. the science is the reality, the observational reality is catching up to the real reality that many of us that were labeled as conspiracy theorists are starting to understand. COVID is a seasonal issue. COVID, their body health, real risk factors should be and should have been being communicated from day one. And as you guys know, one of the guys that shares this platform with me got to make a huge announcement, and guys, he's making news, right? He's making news. And so last night, if you're in the know, and if you watch this show, and listen to the show, that Larry Sharpe is running for governor. But probably a lot of people in the state, since he's only polling at 6%, which only polling at 6% as compared to this time during his last gubernatorial race, where he was not even a blip on any poll, is an amazing achievement. But Larry is going to make some noise. And let's listen to the man himself.
This is the perfect example of how the left and the right paradigm ensures that as long as we're fighting each other, we don't have to solve anything.
Yeah.
So as long as I can blame the other, I'm good. So you get mad at me because I'm black, I'll just say it's racism and I don't have to solve anything. Or I'll say it's a culture war, or you don't like me because I'm left or I'm right. I don't solve anything. I just keep saying the other guy's bad.
Yes, and it's a shield that one uses so they're no longer subject to criticism
At all.
But we have to be able to criticize our leaders because, we have high expectations and reasonable demands to live in a safe city. Used to be safe. De Blasio ran it into the ground. Press hated de Blasio. He's a big, dumb, white idiot.
That's true.
Things aren't happening fast enough because people are scared and a lot of people are suffering. So, Eric Adams may be right. There may be lily white editorial boards at the New York Post and the Daily News, but still he's got to do his job regardless of who's working at those publications.
The issue here, though, it isn't that whether he's right or he's wrong. The issue is there's no infrastructure to make anything happen. There's no culture to actually fix anything. You've got to have a culture that's based upon solutions. Mm-hmm. How do I fix something? How do I make something happen? Look, when I ran for governor in 2018, that's all I talked about was solutions. How do we fix school, going from K through 12 to K through 10? How do we change how we do taxation? How do we raise money for infrastructure? Was leasing out naming rights for bridges? These are ideas that I came up with in 2018. It's why, if I may,
please do.
I can announce that right now, I'm going to be running in 2022. This year, it is official. I will be running for governor here in New York to make more changes, to make things work even better, to give more ideas so that New Yorkers can, to your point, actually vote for somebody who can do things.
And you haven't tried.
So, guys, I don't know about you, but that sends a little shiver up my spine, sends a little tingle down my back. Larry Sharpe officially announcing on a platform, guys, that has a huge audience, on a platform where he is going to be crafting solutions. And guys, let's be honest, right? Some of his solutions are becoming popular all over the country. Okay. I want to say it's Kentucky. States are moving in the direction that Larry suggested back in 2018, and that money should follow the student. Okay. And that's one of the ideas, one of the revolutionary concepts that he wants to bring to New York State. One of the other revolutionary concepts, and you guys have heard me talk about it on my shows plenty, is that the family court systems in New York State are anti-family. Okay. They put people at war with one another. They fight over money. They fight over time with their kids. They fight over the family home. The whole system is designed to, first of all, it's oppositional, right? It's absolutely oppositional. And we need to take a stand and take a step back and bring some common sense reform to those things. Naming rights for infrastructure, guys. Like okay. At first, I'll be honest, and maybe some of you felt the same way, but back in 2018, 2019, when he was really talking about those things and talking about naming rights for infrastructure, I'm like, can you imagine driving over the Taco Bell bridge to get into New York City? And I'm like, all right, I love the idea. It made me laugh. And I love things, guys. That's one of the things I liked about Trump is that he made me laugh. All right. Some of the things that he did. One of the few things that I liked about Trump, to be perfectly honest, but one of the things he did is that he made me laugh. And so the naming rights for infrastructure originally, it made me laugh. But then when I see that, first of all, that concept has to have some value, right? If you think about it, the concept has to have some value. If Mary, if Andrew Cuomo renames the Tappan Zee Bridge to honor his father because the Cuomo name deserves a legacy, according to him, not to me. Okay, that's not necessarily. And look, my memories of Mario Cuomo are nowhere near as bad as my memories of Andrew Cuomo. And I'm old enough to have lived in New York State under both of their tutelage and their quote unquote leadership. So it all of a sudden now I'm thinking about it. Now, would Taco Bell or a bank or McDonald's would they GM or Elon Musk or like would they pay a substantial amount of money to have their name become part of the daily lexicon of I don't know 15 20 million people? I mean, a lot of people interact with the New York City on a daily basis. So what there absolutely is value to that concept. The other things that Larry is in favor of is ending no-knock warrants. And hopefully in the next segment, we'll talk some more about another no-knock warrant situation that you guys heard me talk about it last week. No-knock warrants are a problem. Larry has some interesting concepts about how to end qualified immunity. And I've talked to police friends and I've talked about qualified immunity, and people don't seem to understand the impact of qualified immunity and the concept of ensuring a police officer against legal claims. Okay. That money, the insurance companies are already being paid by your local community. That money will still be paid by your local community on behalf of police officers. So ending qualified immunity doesn't just affect police officers, though, guys. Like judges, okay, make bad decisions. Other elected political officials make bad decisions behind closed doors that now, perhaps, if we end qualified immunity or fix qualified immunity, we can make some progress and having a more responsive elected group of people. Okay. Qualified immunity is a problem. They can do things deliberately wrong, pretend that they made a mistake, and simply get away with it. So at the very least, having a conversation about the best way to end qualified immunity or to change its dynamics is well worth it. So guys, congratulations to Larry Sharpe. Thank you to Larry Sharpe for once again throwing your hat into the ring and making impact. I think it's going to be epic. It's Tim O'Connor, the Freedom Variant, and I'll be right back after these breaks. Bonus content for you, the internet viewer. And to make sure I get an appropriate editing break, I want to thank you guys for being here. It's much appreciated. I'm going to do another break and then I'll come back and do the rest of the show. Welcome back to A Free Solution. It's Tim O'Connor, once again, your Thursday host for A Free Solution. This is the platform I share with Larry Sharpe, and you caught my last segment about him. I share this platform with Kevin Wilson, and I hope you guys join Kevin Wilson and I, whether we pre-record our show and we do it on the internet where we take your comments, or if we manage to figure out a way to get together Friday and do it live on the radio. with you. I hope you guys find a way to participate with us. Thanks again to WYSL and WACK. And guys, I promise I talk a little bit about Justin Trudeau. One of the things, and before the break, I was talking about how Larry Sharpe is running for governor of New York State and how this relates to Justin Trudeau and the current executive situation with Joe Biden and the us or them, the either or, the constant nonstop diatribe of right, you're wrong. Look, I'll be honest with you. Plenty of times when people on the right dunk in the people of the face in the face of people on the left, and they say, look, I proved you're a hypocrite. And then the left comes back with, no, you're the hypocrite. Guys, you've both proven to me at different times that we're all hypocrites and that there's no winning in that situation. What the world needs, and take a look at Justin Trudeau. I'm invoking the Emergency Powers Act. He is unwilling to compromise. And guys, what he has done is incredible. It's just incredible. Literally, they are going to take people's money. They're going to deperson them. They're going to clear the streets in Canada. And that is the result of the us versus them mentality. And guys, I want Justin Trudeau to resign. If he doesn't resign, I want him to lose miserably and embarrassingly. This guy is not a good leader. He is an authoritarian, even as other provinces and states all over Canada are rolling back the COVID restrictions. This guy invokes the Emergency Powers Act. This guy is going to take money from people. This guy is going to clear the streets of Ottawa with the military, with the police, and that is not a solution I want for anyone, not for my friends in Canada, not for people that are going to be living in the future under authoritarian regimes. I want this kind of stuff to be rolled back. Here's a suggestion: roll back the mandates, do away with them. The notion that the government has this obligation to keep people safe from a virus, instead of communicating effective information about your health, about the realities of vaccines, and the right way to approach a situation, and even if you want to call it an emergency, the right way to approach these things. It's time for Justin Trudeau to back it down. That's it. Okay, the guy's a train wreck. But to talk about solutions and to talk about the possibility that we can move forward in a more effective path, we have a guy in New York State, and we should focus on New York State because that's where we live. That's the state that's worth saving. That's where we're at. We should focus on a guy what Larry Sharpe is offering. So before the break, we were talking about qualified immunity. We were talking about solutions, other solutions like money following students, Larry Sharpe bringing revolutionary, solutionary ideas. He's also, guys, he's going to be on a couple different lines. That's the goal, the Unite Party and the Forward Party. The Unite New York State Party and the Forward Party is Andrew Yang's party. These two things, getting Larry's name 3 spots on the ballot versus any of his challengers. Lee Zeldin, probably the Republican, will have 2 spots, which would be the Republican and the Conservative. And guys, I've never seen the Conservative Party put forth a candidate. And if I'm wrong, leave me a comment. Let me know when the Conservative Party has put forward a candidate. And look, maybe Larry gets the Conservative Party. I don't know. Like, we don't know how these things are going to work out. But this is going to be a pivotal election for New York State. And so last Thursday, ladies and gentlemen, I talked about the problem with no-knock search warrants. I talked about Amir Locke and the fact that a young man who legally owned a weapon was dead because people felt the need to put themselves on an opposite sides of a door in an intense, powerful, scary situation. And guess what? As unfortunate as it is, no-knock warrants are in the news again today. This one's datelined out of Pensacola, Florida, February 9th, 2022. The Pensacola Police Department says it has launched an internal affairs investigation after parents say a child was hurt while in police custody. There was a police involved shooting. Another legal gun owner has been charged with attempted murder for a no-knock warrant that was executed at 4:30 in the morning in Pensacola, Florida. Two, apparently, guys, I find this stuff unbelievable, to seize some computer equipment. That's my understanding. Okay. To see some computer equipment, the police in Pensacola, Florida executed a search warrant at 4:30 in the morning. The young man in question, a 24-year-old young man. I'm trying to find his name, guys. Bear with me. Corey Marianu Jr. The SWAT team breaks in the door. Corey responds with a weapon. And now he's been charged with attempted murder. The police took his baby into custody, and one of the children, unfortunately, has been severely injured while in custody. And again, I mean, I doubt. Okay, first of all, let's just go again. Like, let's be thankful, number one, that Corey himself is not dead. Number two, let's take a minute and think about the fact that this child was injured as a result of a no-knock warrant. Like, had the police proceeded with a regular warrant, I'm sure like that they would have gotten the computer equipment. That, like, why amp up the situation by going there at 4:30 in the morning? Corey has no criminal record. He's not a suspect in a different shooting investigation. Like, he's not a criminal suspect, this guy. There may have been, there was another shooting that didn't involve Corey, but maybe he has. There's an outside chance, but no matter what, because the police kicked in his door, they have to make sure that people believe that he has information that he was going to destroy. Why would he wait? Guys, look, again, no-knock warrants, and again, police officers, sometimes innocent people on opposite sides of the door at 4:30 in the morning. You have the right to defend yourself, especially in urban areas, guys, where there are crime rates and that there is an increase in crime. People, law-abiding citizens, have the right to defend themselves. The police even admit they gave this guy about 10 seconds. They knocked on his door for about 10 seconds and then kicked in his door, and the guy shot towards the cops. And now he's been charged with attempted murder. First of all, Florida has a castle doctrine. You have the right to defend your home against invasion like that. As we saw in the Breonna Taylor case, that can be invoked to protect people from shooting at police officers. But the issue is the no-knock warrant. Okay, let's go back to that. Let's just all take a minute and think about this reality that no-knock warrants are the problem. That kicking through somebody's door at strange times over computer equipment, as in the Amir Locke case, it was even less clear to me why they felt they upped the warrant from a regular warrant to go find this other kid who had been involved in some sort of violent activity, a homicide, perhaps, probably, whatever. But it puts amped up, charged up, emotional people on opposite sides of the door. Like, police officers executing a no-knock warrant. I don't, especially in the Amir Allah case, I don't want to blame the police officers. They saw a gun. They're looking for a violent kid. They had to react. They don't want to, they want to be able to go home to their families. But why put them in that position? Why give them the option of putting them in that position? And look, I know that we want to be safe. We want police officers to be safe. But now with this Corey Marino thing, like, how did we get there? How did that turn into a no-knock? Why did they go there at 4:30 in the morning? And that's because of this amped up prosecutorial need for police to take charge of situations that I'm not sure, man, I don't want my friends that are police officers on the opposite side of a door, no matter how much training they have, at 3 o'clock in the morning, if they're going to take a Second Amendment supporters' guns or red flag law somebody, I don't want those two people on the opposite sides of the door at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the morning in the dead of night. When it's a disaster waiting to happen, and the disasters happen. Okay, the disasters happen. And no-knock warrants. Check out Larry's performance on Kennedy. Once again, guys, it's Tim O'Connor, the Freedom Variant. Don't forget to check out Kevin and I's show on Friday. Call in if we're live. Check us out on the internet. If we can't do live, we'll be live on later on today. Thank you all very much for joining me. Once again, thanks to WSL.